What makes someone think they can use government authority to steal what isn't theirs? What entitlement runs so deep that a mother would call the police to demand a black man abandon his own home so her son could purchase it? And what happens when that demand is recorded, documented, and becomes the evidence that destroys her credibility forever? These questions hung in the air on a Tuesday morning when Beverly Hatfield dialed 911 from her Range Rover parked at the edge of her neighbor's ranch, speaking with the precise diction of someone accustomed to being obeyed by institutions. "I need to report a trespasser. There's a man on private property that my son is purchasing. He refuses to vacate. I need him removed immediately." She had no authority to make that demand. The man wasn't trespassing. He owned the ranch outright. Her son had made an offer that the owner had declined, and Beverly had decided that a police welfare check would accomplish what money and manners couldn't. What Beverly didn't know, the man she was reporting had been an attorney for 17 years before retiring to ranching life. He documented everything, and he was about to teach her that government authority exists to protect property owners, not to steal their land for entitled heirs. Samuel Washington had spent 17 years as a civil rights attorney before trading courtrooms for cattle ranches. He'd specialized in property rights and systemic discrimination, cases where institutions used bureaucratic mechanisms to dispossess marginalized communities of land, homes, and generational wealth. The irony of ending his career to focus on his own land was not lost on him. He'd purchased the ranch, 42 acres in rural North Carolina, at 61, after his law partner had retired and offered him first refusal on investment properties. The ranch had been foreclosed, priced aggressively, and represented exactly what Samuel wanted: quiet space and land that nobody could take from him through legal maneuvering. He'd spent 3 years restoring it. Built a modest house on the property, planted native trees, created sustainable grazing systems, bought heritage cattle. The ranch became his life's second act, proof that you could build something valuable through patience and principle. The property sat at the edge of a developing area where suburban sprawl was creeping closer. Real estate prices had been climbing. Samuel had ignored multiple offers from developers and investors. The land wasn't for sale. Not at any price. Then Beverly Hatfield's son, Derek, had made an offer after his mother had driven past, seen the property, and decided it would be perfect for her son's investment portfolio. Samuel had declined politely. Beverly hadn't accepted the decline. She'd called his attorney, claiming the property had community value and suggesting he'd be wise to sell at her offered price. When Samuel refused, she attended a county planning meeting and suggested the land should be rezoned for commercial development, a position that would tank its value as residential property. Samuel had documented all of it, kept records of every call, every letter, every veiled threat disguised as civic concern. But he hadn't anticipated that Beverly would escalate to calling the police to demand his eviction from his own home. Officer Rodriguez arrived at the ranch within 20 minutes. Body camera recording. Samuel was in his field, checking cattle when Rodriguez approached. "Sir, we received a call about trespassing on this property. Can you tell me your relationship to this land?" Samuel turned calmly. "I own it. Samuel Washington. The property is registered in my name. I have deed, tax records, everything." The caller indicated you were occupying property her son is purchasing. Her son made an offer. I declined. "The property isn't for sale. I own it outright. No mortgage, no dispute, no issue." Rodriguez checked his portable computer. "County records confirm you're the registered owner. The property is in your name alone." Samuel nodded. "Then why are you here?" The caller claimed, Rodriguez paused, clearly uncomfortable, that you should be removed so her family could purchase the property. Samuel felt something shift from frustration to calculation. This was the moment. Beverly had just on record attempted to use government authority to evict him from his own property because her son wanted it. "Officer, I want to file a report. The caller attempted to use police authority to dispossess me of my property. That's a felony in this state. Misuse of government systems for private gain. Can we document this interaction?" Rodriguez's demeanor changed immediately. He understood what Samuel was describing. "Absolutely. This needs to be recorded formally." They spent 45 minutes documenting the call, Rodriguez's body camera footage, the county records confirming ownership, and Samuel's account of months of harassment from Beverly and Derek. "This is actionable," Rodriguez said when they finished. "The caller made a false report with the explicit intent of having you removed from your own property. That's not just misuse of emergency services. That's conspiracy to commit theft through government authority. Have you ever watched someone's contempt become evidence of their crime? Comment below if you faced a power weaponized against you. Samuel didn't feel anger as he watched Rodriguez write up the report. He felt something colder and more precise. Strategic clarity. Beverly had handed him a gift, a recorded admission on emergency dispatch, an officer's documentation, a clear pattern of escalating harassment, and most importantly, a textbook case of attempting to misuse government authority for private property gain. This wasn't just a civil matter anymore. This was criminal. He called his old law partner that evening. "Margaret, I need to know about criminal liability for misuse of emergency services to facilitate property theft." Margaret listened to the entire story, then, "Samuel, you have a strong case. The dispatch recording is critical evidence. The officer's documentation is solid. Her pattern of harassment is established. And her explicit statement that she wants him removed so her son can buy the property. That's confession. What's the worst case for her? Felony misuse of emergency services. False report with intent to deprive someone of property. Conspiracy if her son was involved in planning this call. State criminal charges. Federal civil rights investigation possible. She's looking at criminal prosecution, not just a lawsuit." Samuel listened, processing. Beverly thought she was teaching the upstart black rancher to know his place. Instead, she'd handed him her destruction. "I want to pursue this fully," Samuel said. "Every criminal angle, every civil action. Not for money, for the principle. She can't think she can call the police to steal property. That's a lot of legal warfare, old friend. I spent 17 years fighting systemic property theft in courts," Samuel replied. "This is what I know how to do." Samuel filed 3 separate legal actions simultaneously. Criminal complaint, misuse of emergency services, filing a false police report with the intent to deprive the owner of property to, civil lawsuit, against Beverly and Derek for tortious interference, harassment and conspiracy to commit fraud, regulatory complaint, against Beverly for attempting to manipulate county planning processes, but he also did something else. He contacted a legal journalist he'd mentored years ago. "This is a story about how wealth and entitlement attempt to weaponize government against black property ownership," he explained. "A woman tries to use the police to steal her neighbor's land. It's systemic racism wearing the mask of real estate investment." The journalist, Keisha Mills, now an investigative reporter for the regional news affiliate, arrived at the ranch with a camera. Samuel showed her everything: dispatch recordings, Officer Rodriguez's documentation, the trail of Beverly's harassment calls, county records, the property deed, and the explicit text messages between Beverly and Derek discussing strategies to make him leave. The story aired on the evening news. Woman attempted to use police to evict neighbor from own property. The dispatch recording played clearly, Beverly's voice demanding that the police remove Samuel so her son could purchase the ranch. Officer Rodriguez was interviewed. The caller's explicit intent was to have the owner removed from his own property so her family could acquire it. That's not a civil dispute. That's attempted property theft using government authority. By the next morning, the story had been shared 40,000 times. News outlets across the state picked it up. Civil rights organizations issued statements. The county district attorney opened a criminal investigation. Beverly's attorney called Samuel's office within 48 hours. "My client would like to discuss resolving this matter." "Your client attempted to use the police to steal my property," Samuel replied. "There's nothing to resolve except accountability." The criminal charges were filed 3 weeks later. Beverly was charged with misuse of emergency services, felony, filing a false report with the intent to deprive the owner of property, felony, conspiracy to commit fraud, felony. If Derek's involvement is proven, Derek immediately distanced himself, claiming his mother had acted independently. Beverly's trial became the focal point of a larger conversation about how wealth, race, and government authority intersect in property disputes. Beverly Hatfield accepted a plea deal, guilty to misuse of emergency services, 2 years probation, restitution to Samuel for legal fees, and a permanent restraining order prohibiting her from contacting him or his property. More importantly, the case set a legal precedent. The state attorney general cited it when announcing new guidelines for investigating alleged property-related false reports. The guidelines explicitly protected property owners from harassment, disguised as legitimate disputes. Samuel's civil lawsuit proceeded and was settled for $145,000 damages for harassment, legal fees, and emotional distress. Derek's real estate investment ambitions effectively ended after his name was permanently attached to his mother's attempted property theft. But the cultural impact ran deeper. Samuel's story circulated through legal education circles as a case Study in how property rights intersect with race. Law schools used the dispatch recording in civil rights classes. His name became synonymous with standing firm against systemic attempts to dispossess black landowners. 1 year after Beverly's guilty plea, Samuel stood on his ranch watching sunset paint the sky gold and amber. A young black couple approached hesitantly. "Mr. Washington, we're looking to buy property in the area." "Your story. It made us believe we could do it safely." Samuel smiled. "You can. The law protects your ownership. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." "Beverly Hatfield's son tried calling us," the man said. "Said we should be aware the area was transitioning." We understood what he meant, but reading your story, knowing you fought back, it gave us courage. After they left, Samuel reflected on what Beverly had attempted and what that attempt had exposed. She'd seen a black man with land and decided it should belong to her son. She'd weaponized her access to police, her wealth, her whiteness, and her sense of entitlement, and she'd created a documented, prosecuted case study in how that weaponization fails against someone prepared to fight systematically. Her call to 911 had seemed like a strategy. It had been a confession. Officer Rodriguez had seemed like an authority to exploit. He'd become a witness to her crime. The dispatch recording had seemed like a police matter. It had become permanent evidence of attempted property theft. Beverly had thought calling the police would move a black man off land he didn't deserve to own. Instead, she'd ensured that every person facing similar harassment would have his precedent to stand on. That's the mathematics of entitlement meeting preparation. What seems like a small action becomes a permanent record. What feels like power becomes evidence of crime. Samuel had learned that lesson 17 years ago as a civil rights attorney. Beverly had learned it too late, when the authority she'd tried to weaponize turned against her instead. If you've been targeted for property you own, share your story. Your property rights matter. Your documentation matters. And the moment someone tries to weaponize government against your ownership, you have the law on your side.